Shalom, brothers and sisters. I'm Malachi Zadok of the House of Judah Fellowship, and welcome to the lesson, One Day is a Thousand Years. We're going to dive right into 2nd Esdras chapter 14 and verse 10. Again, that is 2nd Esdras chapter 14, verse 10, and it reads, For the world hath lost its youth, and times begin to wax old. For the world is divided into 12 parts, and 10 parts of it are gone already, and half of a 10th part. And there remaineth that which is after the half of the 10th part. So Esdras says here that the earth only has 12 parts, and 10 and a half of those 12 parts are already gone. So in context of the scripture, we know that the Most High is revealing the secrets of the times to Esdras as he revealed them to Moses and to Enoch. So we see in the context here that the Most High is speaking of the times, right? So that word parts is synonymous with days in the Hebrew. You see the word parts, and it is synonymous with the word days in Hebrew. So if the earth is divided so that means if you read the scripture over again, it says that the earth is divided into 12 days. However, it is impossible that the earth has only been around for 10 days in the time of Esdras, because we know in this time, Esdras is older than 10 days old, right? He's much older than that. So it wouldn't make sense to read that scripture as the earth is divided into 12 days. However, scripture rectifies this issue, because scripture, we see in two places that scripture says that that one day with the Most High is as 1,000 years on earth. So we're going to go to 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. Right? 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. And it reads, But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Most High as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. I'm going to read that one more time. This is 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Most High as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. So we see that the Most High is speaking to Esdras from the heavenly timetable, not from the earthly timetable. So when the Most High is saying 12 days to Esdras, Esdras knows that when he's saying 12 days from the heavenlies, Esdras knows that he's speaking of 12,000 years, because he knows that one day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day, right? So the Most High is speaking to Esdras, and the Most High is speaking to Esdras in terms of the heavenly times. One day with him is as 1,000 years on earth. But Scripture says to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. So we're going to go to Psalms chapter 90 and verse 4. And that reads, For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as one day, when it is past, and as a watch in the night. I'm going to read that one more time. For 1,000 years in thy sight are as yesterday, when it is past, and as a watch in the night. So we see that David is saying the same thing. David is saying that 1,000 years on earth is synonymous to one day with the Most High, right? So we see that. So we're going to go back to 2nd Esdras chapter 14. Let's read this again. For the world hath lost its youth, and the times begin to wax old. See, if the earth was only 10 days old, if the earth was only 10 and a half days old in this time, it's not old. He's saying that the earth is old, right? He's saying that it's lost its youth and the times are begin to wax old. Verse 11, the world is divided into 12 parts, and 10 parts of it are gone already, and a half of a 10th part. So he's saying that if you apply these scriptures to this, it's saying that the earth is divided into 12,000 years, and 10,500 of those years are already gone, right? That's according to scripture. So David and Peter are saying the same thing, that a day in earth in heavenly times is synonymous to 1,000 days, is 1,000 years here on earth, right? Now, some would like to make the argument and say that in the Hebrew, this is not what these two scriptures are saying. However, if you go into the Hebrew and look at each of the words within this scripture that they will try to argue are not saying that, they translate to the exact same thing as what they mean in English. So we're going to look at the word day and the Strong's Concordance, right? The word day for 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. If you look at the word day, it comes out to G2250, Hemera. And the definition is a day, the period from sunset to sunset, right? So it's speaking of a day, right? A full day, right? And if you look at that word year in the Strong's Concordance, it comes out to G2094, which is etos. And the definition is a year, right? And then we're going to look at the word thousand in the Strong's Concordance, and it comes out to G5507, which is Chioli, which means 1,000. So each word that is within the scripture in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 means exactly what it says. A day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day with the Most High, right? So obviously the scripture isn't being misinterpreted. It hasn't been mistranslated. It was translated exactly the way it reads, right? And then we're going to look at the last word. This is one. Looking at the word one in the Strong's Concordance, it comes out to G3391, which is Maya. The short definition is first or one, right? Same exact meaning, nothing different. So this will make more sense that the earth is divided into 12,000 years and not 12 days, but 12,000 years. It only makes sense that way. Most of the people who don't believe in scripture use that idea first. They'll say the earth wasn't created in 7 days. That's impossible. That's the same. A lot of atheists will use that one idea from scripture to say that it's not possible. It can't be true that the Bible is real. However, when you do the math all the way up to Ezra's time, it makes sense, right? So we're going to do the math, right? So in terms of creation, it's not 7 days, but 7,000 years.
First off, folks, let me tell you something. When I say something is millions of years old, I am only reporting data from the scientists who determine these dates. It does not mean that I agree. I know better. You see, there are various methods to determining the age of a fossil. Unfortunately, the older something is, the less accurate the dating. And these dating methods are based on assumption. They assume uranium-238 has a half-life of about 4.5 billion years, based on a standard that was created back in 1971. Assuming that the uranium-238 to uranium-235 ratio has been constant since the forming of the Earth. The truth is, it varies from rock to rock. How about explaining to me why they find carbon-14 in coal, diamond, and dinosaur bones, when carbon-14 has a half-life of 5,730 years?
We're looking back in Genesis chapter 1. That is not 7 days. That's not speaking of 7 literal days. Now, it's 7 days with the Most High. It's 7 days with the Most High, but here on earth, that was 7,000 years, right? So in order to calculate this out, we're going to do the math, right? We're going to calculate the time all the way from Adam all the way down to Judah's exile and Ezra's time, right? So we're going to start from Adam and go to Noah, and then from the flood to Judah's exile. And we're going to add up all the years in between that, and then we're going to multiply it out to make sure that we have the correct time and see if Esdras is credible, right? We're going to see if this idea is credible. So we know that it says that 10.5 parts are already gone. 10.5 parts, and on earth, 10.5 days is with the Most High. So on earth, that will be 10,500 years, right? So from Adam to Seth is 130 years, right? And from Seth to Enosh is 105 years. So you add that to the 130 years, right? And you get 235 years. Then from Enosh to Canaan is 90 years, and you add that 90 to the 235, and you get 325. And then from Canaan to Mahaliel and you get 70 years. And you add that 70 years to the 325, and you get 395 years. Now you do this, and you continue going, like from Maleel to Jared, from Jared to Enoch, from Enoch to Methuselah, from Methuselah to Lamech, from Lamech to Noah, and then from Noah to the flood. And when you add up all of those years, you come out to 1,656 years. Right? That's 1,000. That is 1,656 years. Right? So, and we use scripture to line up all of these years. In Genesis 5, you can find all of these years all the way down to Noah in Genesis 5, and you can find the flood, the time of the flood, in Genesis chapter 7, verse 11, right? So if you add up all of those years from all those people, from all the patriarchs before the flood, from Adam all the way down to the flood, you have 1,656 years so far, right? So we're going to keep going. From the flood, we're going to go from the flood all the way down to Judah's exile, right. Beginning from the flood. From the flood to Arphaxad is 2 years. So you add that 2 years to 1,656, and you get 1,658, according to Genesis 11. Then you go from Arphaxad to Shelah, which is 35 years. Then you go from Shelah to Eber. Then you go from Eber to Peleg. And then you go from Peleg to Ru to Serug, Serug to Nahor, Nahor to Terah, Terah to Abraham, Abraham to Isaac, Isaac to Jacob, and then Jacob into Egypt. And from the time of Arphaxad all the way down to Jacob into Egypt is 2,298 years, according to Genesis chapter 47 and verse 9. Right? And then from the time of Jacob in Egypt to the Exodus, and from the Exodus to the temple begun, and then from the temple begun to the exile is all 3,553 years, right? So all the way from Adam to Judah's exile is 3,553 years. Now, after calculating these numbers, we see that man only existed on earth to Ezra's time for 3,553 years. Nothing even close to the time Esdras gives us. But is Esdras incorrect? No, this is why you have to take into account the 7,000 years of creation. When you take into account the 7,000 years of creation, the equation you get is the 7,000 years of creation plus the 3,553 years that man existed on earth. And when you add those two together, you get 10,553. Exactly, almost exactly 10 and a half. He says 10 and a half of those years are already gone. They're 53 years into the second half of 10,000 years. Esdras is correct. Right? So, let's go back over it one more time. Esdras says, actually, I'm going to read straight from it. We're going to go to 2nd Esdras chapter 14, verse 10 once again. For the world hath lost his youth, and the times begin to wax old. For the earth is divided into 12 parts, and 10 parts of it are already gone, and a half of a 10th part. And there remaineth that which is after a half of the 10th part. So that means that Esdras currently is living in the second half of the 10th day, right? So it says that there are 12 parts, 12,000 years. And it says that 10 parts of it, or 10 days of it, is already gone. And then he says a half of a day. So we see that there's 12 days or 12,000 years, and you have 10 and a half days that are already gone, or 10,500. When you add up the time from creation, which is 7,000 years, all the way, plus the 3,553 years that man existed on earth from Adam to Judah's exile, is 3,553 years. When you add those two together, you get a perfect 10,553. 10 and a half parts. So this makes it clear that Esdras was in fact correct, and that Peter and David are also credible in saying that one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. So if you deny that 1,000 years here on earth is one day to the Most High, then you are directly obstructing the times, and you're calling the Most High a liar. Because we know that if this wasn't the case, it wouldn't be in Scripture. We know that it was the Most High who put the word in the men who wrote these books, right? These books were already on the heavenly tablets. This wasn't the men who were writing these books. It was the Most High, right? He used men to write these books. So I hope you were edified by the lesson, and I hope everything was easily understood. Have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. Shabbat Shalom.